Welcome back to the Nullified Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Survivor 42, Episode 3. And I am joined here by Survivor royalty, I should say, because you've played the game before. I'm only a fan myself. I don't normally know what I'm talking about half of the time, but I am joined by Qieän from Survivor South Africa, Immunity Island, the second person from Immunity Island that I've been able to get to come on the podcast here. Qieän, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I can't wait to actually kind of like dig deep into this episode. This messy episode, should I say.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I mean, last time we spoke, you were in Hong Kong. You were doing a couple of different things. We won't talk about anything placements wise, just in case there are some fans from the US that do want to go and watch your season at some stage. But we did an interview after your season finished, and I always wanted to get you back on the podcast. And I know you're a massive fan of Survivor, so I thought, why not reach out and get you to talk about the US show, Survivor 42. What has been your thoughts on this season so far? We're 3 episodes in. Are you liking it? How do you think this compares to some of the previous seasons of Survivor over in the US?
I kind of feel like after 40, there's a new generation of Survivor castaways coming into the show. There are so many hardcore super fans that are actually being cast onto the seasons. But I've also found that they are not playing how kind of like following the Survivor 101 of what the kind of pre-successes such as Sandra and Boston Rob, what they've taught throughout the different seasons, of what should be done or should not be done. Hence why I think that is why it has been such kind of like a messy, chaotic season with the characters and their personalities, the likes of Marianne, who is just so bubbly but so full on, So it will be very, very interesting. We're still so early in the game. There is still a couple more episodes to go. So I would love to see how right now they're all kind of like really chaotic coming into it. So excited, they don't know what happened in season 41. And I really like to see if this whole kind of like really chaotic high energy is going to carry on. Or maybe they will kind of come to this and say like, okay, I'm on Survivor. Let's actually keep our feet on the ground and think about what we've learned from watching all the seasons of, the previous Survivor seasons for USA, Australia, or even South Africa.
Yeah, so quite interested. You've played this game before. Obviously, you know that an edit can only show one dimension or maybe 2 dimensions of someone's personality when they're out there. But we're all fans. I guess you're a fan now watching the show back as well. Is there someone specific or a couple of people specifically this season that have stood out to you where you think if you were out there on the island, you would have liked to have played with these specific players?
I definitely have to say Aquaman. That's Jonathan.
Yes.
I remember watching him on him during the challenge. He was incredible. He definitely is a challenge beast. But what I really, really like about him is the fact that he is very welcoming and accepting of people from different walks. And he understands that, you need different personalities to complement you, to help you along in your long game. So I think definitely he definitely stood up for me. And this is a good standout for me. But the other bad standout, which could be also good potentially, depending on how it plays out for him in the next episode, is Daniel.
Yes.
The way how he was he's a hot mess during the tribal council, and the things that he did to lead him to where he was at tribal council, throwing Chanel under the bus. So I feel like he definitely is a character to look out for. He could either be voted out next for being unpredictable and unreliable, or he could go far. It really, really depends on kind of like, how he manages his next step and how he manages his tribe mates in the next few days, I guess.
Yeah. And it's an interesting point you're bringing up with Daniel. I put up a poll in the beginning of this podcast, which we'll continue to have running for the whole time while we're talking. And I said, are you Team Daniel or Team Chanel moving forward? The early standing here after 6 vote is 67% of people are saying they're Team Daniel and 33% of people are saying that they're Team Chanel. we will continue to keep that poll open until the end of the episode, and we'll talk more about the duo of Chanel and Daniel, because I've got a lot to say. There's a lot on my mind. I do the short video form of my top 5 thoughts immediately after I watch the episode, every single episode for Australian Survivor, and I also do that now for the US, but I always find myself afterwards thinking, why did I not say this? Why did I not say that? Because I do it so closely after the episode is finished. I normally have extra thoughts that come up afterwards, so we'll definitely talk about that. I do want to start sort of in the beginning of this episode, and we're going to go to one of the most bubbly personalities here this season, Marianne. She's loved online. Everybody on Twitter loves Marianne. I like her as well. I think her energy would be too high for me if I had to be on the island for too long and I didn't eat. I do suffer from being hangry, so I don't know how her personality would sit with me after about a week or 2 weeks of being out there not eating, but love her as a TV character on the show. She seems to be very trusting, Qieän, and she gives a lot of information away to her tribe. She's told them that she's got the extra vote. She's also found the idol in front of Omar. What do you think of this gameplay from Marianne here in this 4-person tribe? Have you been impressed by it? Do you think she's flirting a little bit with danger in the way that she's playing this game? She seems to be going all in at this point.
I mean, like, from my understanding of episode 2 is that they are deciding to go full strong. That's Jonathan, Omar, Lindsay, and Marianne. Hence why they voted out Mariah, who they felt doesn't really quite gel very well with them. So they're thinking about, okay, they need to build a strong alliance to make it into merge. And I feel that Marianne, being a Survivor super fan, I mean, she's watched all the season except one. I think it's the
Tocantins. Yeah, so 6 episodes of Tocantins. Such a random season not to watch 6 episodes, because it had like Coach, JT, Tyson, you know, such big characters from that season. So it's interesting that that's the season she hasn't seen. I mean, the full season.
You would love to find out why she decided to just kind of like stop watching it, right? But I mean, really bizarre. But I don't expect less from her in terms of like from what I can see her personality and her character. So I feel like maybe that, I mean, Survivor 101, what we know is that never tell anyone that you got an idol. Never tell anyone that, you know, that you found and you have some sort of advantage, because it can be worked against you in the future. Because depending on how, even if you really you feel like you can trust your alliance right now, they may use it against you for their benefit, for their interest in the long game. So it is kind of basically Taku public knowledge that she has this no vote, and they actually decided that, so what do we do next? You know, in the beginning of the episode, if I remember correctly, they all unanimously decided to say they need to go look for an idol. Hence why Omar went with Marianne to go look for an idol. So I guess, I mean, it could have been Omar who actually found an idol, but just to Marianne's like that, she's the one who found it. And obviously she couldn't actually, even if she wanted to hide it, she couldn't. And I feel like so far from what I'm seeing is that they have a very open communication relationship within this Taku tribe, where they're freely sharing information, thinking, like, believing. I think it looks like from the edit, it looks like they truly believe that they are going to be Taku strong, and they're going to stick with each other for the long haul. But obviously, we don't know what happens. If something's bound to happen if they touch wood, lose an immunity challenge, and one of them has to go, then what happens, you know? But Marianne, at this point, hold a lot of power because she has an extra vote. She can decide who goes home. And then she's also,
you know what I realized, by the way, just on that train of thought, about Marianne having the extra idol, something I realized after I did my top 5 takeaways is that Lindsay still has the amulet as well, and she's got an extra vote as well. So that tribe of 4 people have got 6 votes if they do go into the merge, and if they can keep the 4 people strong at this stage. So they may look like they're not as threatening going into a merge if they can get all 4 of them there. But I think this is the power alliance from what the show has shown us in any case at this stage, because like you said, they're sharing information, they're very close. The only fraction in that group is Lindsay being very aware that Marianne is a threat, but I don't think that Omar or Jonathan is looking at her in the same light. So you could even argue that Lindsay could potentially be the person that is actually on the outside here. But that amulet that she's got is very powerful as well. I believe it's one additional vote at this stage. If one of them gets voted out, it becomes something else. I forgot what the second part of it is. And then the third one is it becomes an idol. I don't know if you've written that down somewhere.
I have. Let me just double check. But this is not public knowledge. So everyone.
Yes.
It was Drea, Hai, and Lindsay that actually got the amulet. But it's not public knowledge at all. So the
Lindsay's doing a good job. I'm very impressed with Lindsay being able to keep that a secret. Also, it seems like Drea and Hai have stayed true to the pact that they made as well, and they haven't told anybody about it either. So there's a lot of other things that everybody is getting the knowledge of it, but this amulet seems to still be undercover at this stage. I also just want to say hello to our Nunes here in the live stream saying, hello, Chris and Qieän. Looking forward to hearing your take on this episode. Welcome to the live stream.
Hello.
Yeah, so I think that it's a very powerful tool, and I think what you're saying in regards to these four working very strongly together, I think will hold true throughout the season. The big thing here is they need to continue to win, because they, in my mind, can't afford to lose more numbers moving forward. And luckily for them, in this episode, things do go pretty well for them, and we'll talk about that challenge in a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely want to comment on that, because obviously, like, in terms of how long can Jonathan actually carry the tribe in terms of physical challenges? Now, going back to the amulet, so it's Hai, Drea, and Lindsay. So as long, if there are 3 amulets in the game, it means that it's an extra vote. 2 amulet means still a vote, and 1 amulet, if there's only 1 amulet left in the game and it's played, it has the power of an idol. So the last time it can be used when there are 6 players left in the game. So it's kind of also up to Lindsay whether she wants to, because she doesn't get to speak to Drea or Hai. She doesn't know what they're thinking. So it's totally up to her whether, I think she also needs to decide that whether she is going to keep on her original alliance with the Taco tribe. And if she gets to merge, we don't know what's going to happen in merge. If Drea and Hai will still be there because it's a 3-person secret, would she actually decide, oh, you know what? This situation with the original Taku actually doesn't benefit me. I think she has a great advantage because she has the power and the ability to actually jump ship. Should Hai and Drea both make it to merge, and she is also there.
Yeah, I love the amulet advantage. It's one of the new advantages that came into this season, where a lot of the times fans of the show, we're salty old school fans. We don't like anything new in the game. But this to me has been an exciting one because of the fact that it forces you to work with other people in other tribes, and it creates those cross-tribal connections for you, which we'll see more of in this episode. So it's really how Survivor 42 is sort of shaping up, is that there is a lot of connections that kind of muddies the water, and they've had to change it because if you look at Survivor 42 right now, it's probably going to follow the template of 41, where we're most likely not going to see a tribe swap. So how do you force those connections into other tribes without swapping the tribe? I think you have to bring these things like Shipwheel Island or Shipwreck Island, whatever you want to call it, and also the amulet to sort of forge those relationships. But I do want to move on before we go to the island and who goes there. We actually go to the Green tribe here, and we get to see a little bit more of the dynamics there. We've got Daniel, that seems to be someone that really would be a lot of hard work to keep under control in your alliance. He loses things all the time out on the island. Now, were there people in your season that lost things like this as well? It seems like this season specifically, Mike losing the idol, Daniel losing the idol, and also the clue. People are just losing things everywhere.
I mean, like, you know, I think they are quite sloppy into the Vati. So basically, Mike, I think Mike is going everything against what a traditional survival fan would actually do go into the show. It's like, one is definitely you don't tell anyone that you've got an idol, and obviously first thing he does, he goes and tells Jenny, but Jenny is basically pretty much his number one in this game, but unfortunately she's gone. And then Daniel, because he felt like he could use Daniel's brain to his advantage, and help him in terms of how to play the idol. But I feel like it's quite a dangerous sloppy game that he's playing, because when he actually gave the entire hidden immunity idol parchment with the idol to Daniel, I just thought, oh my goodness, flashing back to Survivor Blood versus Water when it happened between Jesse and Sam.
Yes,
could have easily gone the wrong way, because technically Daniel did not steal the idol, it was given to him. So if Daniel didn't want to give it back to Mike, he wouldn't have any, if he can just say like, oh, I lost it or something, then Daniel actually holds the power to because I don't think there was any way anywhere in the episode or in the parchment where it actually mentioned that only the person who finds it has the power to use it. So I think it actually is quite interesting in terms of how there's a bunch of super fans in this season, but they are all playing against what the traditional Survivor fan would have done. What we've learned, watching all the different seasons of what, things that Sandra and Boston Rob, what they taught us, what we should and should not do, and they are just going all in and being so chaotic and doing everything that you should not do. So
Yes.
So it's been quite fun, and it's also I think it can cause a lot of drama and chaos going forward if they are going to carry on playing in such a sloppy way, should I say.
So entertaining. I really hope that this continues. Like, I know for them as individuals, it's not the best moves, but for me as a fan watching the show, I'm enjoying it. I love the sloppy play, but I agree with you. A few things here, Mike finding the idol and sharing it. He thought he shared it with the two people that were closest to him, and Jenny seemed to be very solid with him, but Daniel, someone probably that should not be trusted. You probably could pick up on the fact that he's a wild card. You should pick up on the fact that he's all over the place and probably play according to that. I would have thought Chanel would have been a lot more stable, but it looked like Chanel and Jenny had a closer relationship than Mike and her potentially having that relationship. So it's very interesting. But one of the things definitely I do agree with you on here is that handing that idol to Daniel is very risky. And a lot of people in the comments below, when I did my first top 5 thoughts and on Reddit, have said they think that Daniel is potentially looking for a way to steal the idol, and he's trying to read through the fine print to see if there is a way that he can take that idol away from Mike. But I do believe that Mike actually has to transfer the ownership to him. So even if he gives him the idol and says, you can read the clue, but I keep the ownership of the idol, it means Daniel can't take it. Now, I know there's some slight differences in rules between how idols can be played in Australia and how it can be played in South Africa and how it can be played in the US. So the only way we'll really probably know the answer to this is if we get to interview someone like Mike and ask him about the rules after the season. It would be very interesting to know what he says. But I tell you what, if I gave the idol to someone and I said, you can go read the fine print, and they came back without the idol and without the clue, I would be very suspicious of that. Like, did Daniel lose it on purpose, or did he try and see if he could pull a fast one on Mike? If I was the player, I would be thinking he's trying to blindside me and he's trying to steal my idol. So Daniel playing with fire here. And from what I've heard in the exit interviews, he apparently did this multiple times until Mike gave in, because Mike didn't want to give him the idol to read in the beginning. And you've got to wonder if he's doing that at the cost of his own social game. But this is going to explode more so towards the end of the game, because he's like this snowball that's just gaining momentum and getting bigger and bigger as he's going down this mountain. And that's going to continue on throughout this episode. I do want to move into the challenge itself here, going into the immunity challenge. Very exciting immunity challenge out on the water. They have to swim out, get a ladder, collect a ladder, and then climb up to get some keys. They first have to untie a buoy, get the ladder, climb up to get some keys. and then move on to the beach where they have to again take a ladder, which seems to be a bit easier on land, to get the final key, and then unlock to get some sandbags that they've got to throw onto little stands to win this challenge. And you kind of alluded to this in the beginning. I'm a big fan of Jonathan as well. He's been really impressive this season, and the thing that to me stood out is that, you know, the previous episode we see him and Omar sitting down, and Omar wants to open a coconut, and he doesn't just bulldoze his way and say, hey, here, let me do it. He actually asks him, do you mind me showing you how to do it? Which shows me he's socially aware, he understands soft skills, he's a kind soul, even though he's this big guy. But the target on this guy, I mean, he's lovable socially, he seems to be a great guy, he's physically a beast. He, man alone, wins this challenge for his tribe. And Jeff makes a big deal out of this as well, you know, saying that I've very rarely seen this.
Why do they do that? Because it just paints a math on top of what already is so obvious. Jeff puts an even big red target on his back to say, oh, look, here's Jonathan, he's Aquaman, he's a challenge beast. You know, it's just like, please don't do that to them. We love them. You know, we want to keep them. It's just, for me, I feel like when the hosts do that, it just kind of, it does affect the thinking of the other players just slightly, because then they can, you know, when people see it, that people acknowledge it, but when they hear it, it's a reaffirmation, like, oh, definitely. We can see Jonathan, and we know Jonathan is a challenge beast, and he's going to be a threat. So no, definitely. But it's really, really, really impressive what he did, because he did not only kind of single-handed win that challenge for Taku, but he also looked after his tribe mates who were struggling in that big wave. Kind of reminded me of obviously Chappies in my season, where he went and saved Santoni in one of our immunity challenges. One of our reward challenges, and he also helped Daniela. So I mean, it really, my heart really, you know, it feels so warm and fuzzy when I see people are actually can be really truly selfless in this game, even though Survivor is a game for yourself. But right now, where it's kind of like not an individual game yet, you kind of have to do that. So I don't think that Jonathan is somebody who thinks too much about this part, but it does, for me, I feel it contributes to his social game, being such a good and kind human being.
Yeah, I'm very worried for Jonathan because of this performance that he had here, and I was worried for him coming into the season when I had to do my draft picks, because he just physically stands out, you know, compared to the rest of the cast. And I don't think that there's many alpha male type of characters even in this season compared to previous seasons. I think he stands out. Mike is the older gentleman that looks really hard as well, but I think in that sense alone he's going to stand out. So I'm really worried for him, and I agree, Jeff having that moment there to celebrate him definitely didn't help him at all, and he could have held back from doing that until the reunion and talked about, hey, you remember that time when you went out there to carry your team on your back and you pulled Omar and Marianne out of the water? You know, you were a beast in that challenge. Why not do this when the game is over? But I think Jeff can't help himself. It's similar to some of the other hosts. They just get so excited being in the thick of it. They want to address it and want to talk to it. But I don't know, Jonathan might be the one guy that could get away with this, because his target is that big that it is obvious. Is Jeff really giving anything away here? Everybody's probably already looking at him. They already saw him beast that challenge. Jeff is probably just stating the obvious, to be honest, but a really impressive show of strength for him to lift that ladder while Lindsay is climbing up on it as well with a moving current. I don't think anybody else was going to finish this challenge. And we get a survivor first here with the challenge being stopped halfway through for them to skip that portion of the challenge to continue. I was happy for Jeff to do it personally, because I feel like safety should always be the number one priority for anybody that participates in these shows. And I remember the specific scene that you were talking about in your own season, where Chappies had a very similar performance to the performance that Jonathan had here. And we talked about even safety back then and how important it is to make sure that it is safe for people out there. How did you feel about the fact that they sort of stopped this challenge halfway into it and sort of skipped it?
One thing that I have to definitely say is I vouch for all the production teams, regardless of which country they're from, is that they definitely do put our safety first. if the weather condition isn't as great, they don't feel it's not deemed that it's safe enough, they will make us wait before we actually are allowed to actually go in and actually compete in the challenge. And it's all tested. So the crew will test the challenge before the castaway actually goes in and actually do it. So I don't believe prior to them getting kind of like taken to the platforms in the ocean, I think the crew genuinely believe that it was a good enough condition for them to compete in. But obviously, the ocean is something that we cannot control, and clearly the situation until the current and the wave obviously got stronger as the challenge carried on. And I feel that it really is like, a really good call from production to stop it, to stop the challenge in the middle of it for the safety of for the castaway. So really, really grateful that they actually did it. I wouldn't want to see that, if just during this challenge somebody actually needed to be kind of put on a gurney and taken out of the game. So yeah.
And not everybody is used to swimming out in the ocean as well. It's a completely different field to training and getting ready for a season. Because I'm sure if you find out that you're going to go on Survivor, you go, and if you have never done any swimming before, you go and do some swimming lessons, and you prepare yourself as best as you can for that. And specifically with this cast, they probably have been in the pipeline to go and do this for quite a while, because Survivor lost the whole year. So a lot of people were in that casting process for a lot longer. But swimming in a swimming pool and swimming out in the ocean is two very, very different things. Like, I mean, I don't mess with the ocean myself. I do go and swim in the ocean, but I do know when the ocean is not my friend, and when the currents are like that and it's choppy. I'm a good swimmer, but I don't think I am that confident. I mean, in New Zealand, we've got the western side of our beaches here that have got massive currents, and sports stars that have played rugby league at the highest level have gone in there and have perished. We've had that happen in the last 5 to 6 years because of how strong the currents are. So you can be the fittest person, the best swimmer out there, you do not mess with the ocean. Like you said, you can't control it.
I mean, when we are swimming in a swimming pool, it's a controlled environment. So you know that you're safe there, but the current can be so strong that you're, and for a lot of people, like, they don't have the knowledge that so for example, one of the things that I've actually learned is that if the current is going to carry you, you don't fight it. You let it, you just let it go with the flow and see if maybe, the ocean will birth you. And for me personally, I knew that there would potentially be challenges such as kind of like going into the water and fetching something from under the water. A buoy of Qieän, etc. So I actually went and had free diving lessons prior to going into the show. But that doesn't mean I'm like fully prepared and that I am that I would be a challenge beast in it, But I knew going into the Survivor season is that I don't know what challenges are going to come, and that maybe perhaps I would need to actually kind of like step up and say, all right, I've tried this before and they may attempt it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that, that you'd be really good at it. So I'm sure that a lot of the castaways that has gone into the game would know that it's something that is inevitable and they would need to do it, but it doesn't mean that they're actually really capable at doing it, which makes it, which is why there is a bit of a risk element when you are actually signing yourself up as a castaway for the game.
Yeah. You kind of sign everything away when you go out there. So it's something the worst.
You
so
signed your life.
Better.
So like for me, I love the game so much. I'm like, and like when Daniel says as a lawyer, you should know to read the fine print. For me, like I was a bit of like kind of like, you get given this whole big contract and
yes.
you have to read through it. I think for us it was like 70 odd pages of the contract. Wow. And I just felt like, you're in your hotel room, you're quarantining, your nerves are so high, you're just thinking, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get into the game. You actually can't actually sit down and concentrate and read through it every single word of the 70 odd pages. So for me, what I did was like, you know what? I'm just going to sign it because I love this game so much. If there are any consequences post me signing this, I will deal with it because for the love of the game, I'll just go all out. So yeah. I guess I don't know about anyone else, but that is definitely how I felt. I'm like, I love the game. If there are any kind of like responsibilities that I have to take on, I'll take it.
It's crazy that you signed that in quarantine before you go out and actually play the game. I would have thought that you would sign this a lot earlier within the process of actually going out and playing the game. But listen, I'm not here to judge. Like you said, the producers do the best that they can there. Nunes asks, who makes the call? Is it the producers? Is it Jeff, or is it medical, or is there a specialized safety team that makes the call for when they stop this? Now, I've heard from people before, I believe that Russell Hans previously said that medical is above Jeff. So if they say it's unsafe, they can stop it. And I'm sure safety would be the same in these types of challenges. Do you have any insights in regards to how it would have worked in Survivor South Africa?
For us, there weren't any kind of medically critical situations, but if there are any sort of like kind of like any medical attention that needs to be attended to, definitely the medicals do make the call as to whether a person is fit to continue in the game or not. So obviously we saw earlier in the seasons where they pulled Jackson Fox away from the game
Yes.
because of his medical conditions. So medical team are so on top of it. They want to ensure that your safety is first, so that they will not hesitate to stop the game or pull you away from the game if they deem fit. Because obviously, despite the fact that we did sign an indemnity, we don't want anyone to kind of have a fatal accident on the show. I mean, as a fan, I definitely do not want to see that.
Same. Okay, we've got Jake here in the background now. I do apologize, Jake. I must have mixed up some of the time zones because I've been dealing with the time zone for Qieän being over in Singapore, myself being in Auckland, and then Jake being over in Arizona. So the times got a little bit mixed, but Jake meet Qieän, meet Jake. Jake is a very diehard super fan that watches not just the US Survivor shows, but also all of Survivor South Africa and also Australian Survivor. Jake, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it looks like there was a bit of miscommunication, but that's all right.
That's my fault. 100% my fault.
It's okay.
It's good you're here, so it's
better late than never. So
you're here for the most you're here for the most important part of it. In any case, we haven't gotten into any of the shenanigans past the immunity challenge. So I do want to talk about at the immunity challenge. Obviously, there's a big decision that needs to get made here. The Orange Taku tribe, they win outright. They get to choose between fishing gear and they get to choose between fruit. Obviously, they're going to go for the fishing gear because it does look like Jonathan is capable of actually going out there and catching food. Now, Qieän, you've played Survivor before. And how important is it if you've got a provider out there? Because I know in your season, it seemed that it was really difficult to actually just live off the land and to go out into the ocean and catch fish and things like that. In a season like Survivor 42, where they don't even get rice, they get nothing. Do you believe that being a provider has actually become more important in the game again? Because you know that for the longest period of time, people have not really cared about someone being a provider. They'll vote them out in any case because they knew that they would get the bare minimum to not die out there. Well, now they may not even get that. Do you think that if Jonathan can start catching fish, that's another way he can prolong his life in this game?
I think definitely, because for the South African season, we were blessed. I mean, I don't think there wasn't a single day where I felt like I was hungry at all, despite the fact, I mean, I wasn't eating as much as I would have in a normal circumstances. But for us, the oceans by the Wild Coast was so rough that despite the fact that my tribe actually did win the reward challenge of the fishing gear, it was no use to us. But luckily for us is that the fact that there were actually crabs that runs along the beach in the morning. So we could kind of go and catch the crabs to add on to our daily nutrition. And obviously for Survivor Australia, they do have their rice and beans. But in terms of Survivor USA, where it's such a short game of only 26 days and there is no food, I think there are coconuts around, because I remember Hai mentioning that, he can't just live on coconut and he eventually kind of caved in and had some of the hermit crab, I think definitely that, going forward for this season, where in terms of Taku, where there aren't any physically strong people in the tribe. I mean, there is Omar, who, sorry to say this, definitely does not look like he's somebody who can be Aquaman and go into the ocean and catch fish. And Marianne and I think Lindsay, potentially, I think she could potentially. I feel like maybe she is kind of like hiding back her physical abilities, because from what I can see, she looks quite fit. But I think definitely for sure, in terms of that, where it would be a lot easier for him to kind of step onto the role as a provider and actually feed everyone to make sure everyone is strong enough for challenges to go forward. Because obviously we know without food, without sustenance, without energy, you just simply, your mind and your body are just not. Doesn't matter how many times people say your mind is stronger than your body. If you're not fed, if your body is weak, there's no ways you can actually perform 100%,
Yeah, it's funny. Survivor 42, the game mechanics have taken food away from the players. In your season, there was a specific player that took food away from the players in the game. We won't talk about who that player is, just in case someone does want to go watch it. But both seasons have had someone that took food away from people in the game. Jake, the decision here is an interesting one. They have to decide on who is going to go to Shipwheel Island, and they choose Chanel, and then they choose Omar to go with Chanel on this journey. It did look like Chanel and Omar both formed a great relationship out there, and that they were kind of feeling each other. Their vibe was very similar, but some questionable decisions get made out there. How did you feel about Chanel and Omar firstly being the two that go to Shipwheel Island, and overall the gameplay there? And then when you've given your thoughts on it, I'll let Qieän also talk to that a little bit.
I think that they chose Chanel because probably they think she might seem like a pretty strong player just from the looks of it, and maybe she'll try to shake some things up if she's able to get an advantage at the Shipwheel Island. So that might have been their thinking or their reasoning. I'm not sure. It's kind of random because they don't, know the people on that tribe. But I think Omar was interesting because I think it shows that they probably trust him the most on that tribe, just kind of as a consensus to like tell the truth when he comes back about what, really went on there. And as for what actually went on there, what a disaster. Things were said, and then the complete opposite things were actually done by Chanel. I don't want to go in too hard on these players because I don't want to be mean-spirited, but
hey, you can criticize their gameplay and not them as people, right? Because on this podcast, we don't go beyond the game, but you can still criticize the moves they made in the game.
I think the biggest thing, like I said, is that she said one thing and then just did the complete opposite. Like she told Omar, "I cannot lose my vote.
Risk, yeah.
I cannot risk my vote. Yeah, I can't. There's no way, And I believe she already knew. Yeah, she already knew Mike lost his vote. It's just like
it's questionable gameplay from Chanel.
Was it worth it? Like, there's just I see the.
I think there was definitely a lot of miscommunication over there, because she feels she made it very clear to Omar that I cannot risk to lose my vote today. I need to have my vote. And to Omar, he feels that if she's saying that she cannot risk it, then she's definitely going to play it safe, which means for him, he can risk it, then he can actually. So they did say, how can we actually go about this so that we both walk out of this with an advantage, so that it's advantageous to both of us walking out of Shipwheel Island. So I think Omar's thinking is like, okay, Chanel said that she cannot lose a vote, so she'll probably go for protect the vote. Okay, there she walks out with an advantage. And what does he get if he also, protects the votes? He gets nothing out of it. So for him to get an advantage of it, he's got to risk it. So then there is an uneven decision where they both, then Omar gets an additional vote, and Chanel keeps a vote for the tribal council later in the evening. So I think for him, that's how I saw it, that he feels like this is probably the best way going forward for both of them. They both walk out with something.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that Omar made the right decision based on the signals that Chanel was giving him. Omar has got no real risk at this point where his vote means anything because he's not going to tribal council in that option. And he probably thought, listen, she's told me she can't lose this vote. She's going to have to play it safe. But one of the things I really, really enjoy about this, now let's put aside that Chanel, in my opinion, made a really big mistake here, and obviously it's going to blow up in her face later on in the episode. Let's look at this game mechanic. It was used in Survivor 41. People were very 50-50 on if this whole ship wheel island was a good thing, and I know people were low on it. I wasn't as low on it personally. I thought it brought an interesting dynamic to the game. Funny enough, Token Chains, which Marianne didn't watch 6 of the episodes, had an exile island where people had to go from 2 different tribes to exile island, and that birthed a cross-tribal alliance. So I always enjoyed the times where you get that. Plus now, a second season that we're seeing this, people are playing this game completely differently with the same rules that season 41 has had, and it's so much more exciting. All of these players have come to play. We've not seen 2 players go and say, we're both going to risk it at the same time. And we do see it here where people actually lose their vote. And I think that having a consequence to getting an advantage, having a risk and reward to it, in the game of Survivor makes for so much more of an interesting show than just giving people idols and just saying, here's an idol, here's an advantage, go and play it. I love the idols. I love the twists that they bring in if it's used in this manner of risk and reward, because it's less powerful for me actually this season and even last season to a certain degree than what it has been in previous seasons. So fans have been shouting for a very long time, there's too many rewards, too many advantages in the game. It's ruining the social aspect of the game. But now the producers have gone and put these things in where you've got to make social reads. There's a risk to it. And I think that this is balancing the game. So I feel like as fans, let's be critical of Jeff Probst and the production team when they're making mistakes, but also let's applaud them when they're doing the right thing. And I think this is really exciting to watch. Would you agree with that, Jake, as a big fan of the show? I saw you nodding as I was talking.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think some kind of the hardcore fans, I think, are not appreciating about some of these twists, like with the phrases and losing your vote. You could argue that maybe it's too severe of a punishment, but I love that there's some sort of risk about getting these advantages. I mean, one of the biggest controversies in recent Survivor history is Ben, where he just found idol after idol after idol, and there was just nothing stopping him other than the other players. If he just kind of knew what general area to look in, then boom, there's nothing else he needs to do. He just needs to play the idol at the next tribal council. Now there's more to it, and I love that. And now when you go to these islands, or Shipwell Island, and in past seasons, you might get a clue, and that was kind of the end of it if you can just figure out the clue. But now there's more to it. You need to risk your vote. You need to kind of suss out what the other players are thinking and what they're going to do, what decision they're going to make. And I think it adds so much more complexity, but in a good way. And I don't think people are really appreciating it as much as I am, and I guess you too. And, I'm as critical of the show as really anyone, in my opinion. When the show does something, in my opinion, dumb, I'll call it out. And right now, I don't think that this is dumb. I really like it. And I'm going to, put some praise on production for implementing it.
Yeah, Qieän, what do you think of this, new dynamic within the game, the risk and reward? Because your season also had a little bit of risk and reward in it, but this has gone to the next level now in Survivor 42 with potentially losing a vote.
Oh, don't upset me. I never got to go to Immunity Island. Come on.
Spoiler for anybody that hasn't seen it.
I think it's brilliant because it's been 20 odd years now with Survivor USA, and you need, as we play castaways in the game, there's one thing that we always should try and remind ourselves that we should always adapt and evolve. And this is what Survivor is doing. We can't keep on. Yes, there is a Survivor 101 where we have the old school kind of rules of where, you know what the classic way of playing Survivor is. But we have to kind of move on to the next stages of the game, So I think it's really, really brilliant that there's an unknown element to it, because you don't know after you played either protect or risk your vote what you're going to get until you go to tribal council. So, for example, sitting at Vati is Jenny. She doesn't know. They haven't been to tribal council yet. She doesn't know whether she's got a no vote or she's got an extra vote, right. Or she's got a vote. So she doesn't know what the outcome is of it, which I think makes it really, really fascinating and unpredictable in terms of the outcome, because there can be so many different outcomes regardless. So the castaways can think, okay, we want to vote this way, but this element of the game makes it unpredictable, because they might think, we want this person, we want Lydia to go, but should Jenny and Chanel have no vote, Jenny's probably going home. So I think it makes it really, really fascinating to watch, and make it even more difficult as a new generation castaway to play this game. So basically, for me, Survival 101, one of the key skills in this game is, as Boston Rob and Sandra always says, is like you need to understand the motivation of the person that you're playing with, understand their motivation. What is their interest, in the game? Like, why are they playing it? And how can you make your own best interest their best interest? So understanding that, then you can actually kind of try and see, okay, you can predict how this person you're planning to either keep as an alliance or keep as a frenemy, how they're going to make their next move, which is going to benefit you in the end. So this is all very much about the whole social element of this game, because after all, Survivor is the biggest social experiment in the world. So, which I absolutely love it, because they have definitely stepped up the game in terms of creating that unpredictability about humans. And even though this is kind of like a physical element into it, but what makes this game so fun for me is humans are so dynamic. I always say, for my season, I say that my truth is dependent on the situation. And this is where I think players have to come in, castaways have to come in and be like, all right, my truth in this situation is going to be like this, but I'm now faced with this kind of different set of circumstances. What am I going to do? So this is where Chanel came back in, and she needed to kind of change up her decision of how to put the votes, which obviously we will go more into. Yes. Yeah, that's pretty much how much I have to say about the ship wheel situation.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really enjoy it. And, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how they move forward from season 42 when they go into season 43 and they go into season 44. What do they keep? What do they change? Because now, again, you've had 2 seasons where people have seen the new rules of Survivor. They've seen what you do in regards to risk and don't risk your vote. So again, the game is going to have to evolve to keep castaways on their toes, which is not easy to do 42 seasons into a franchise that's been on air since like the early 2000s, right? So hats off to Jeff. I've been very critical of some of the things that he's done in recent seasons. I am very much against any kind of edge of extinction, getting back into the game. It's not my cup of tea. I wasn't a big fan of the hourglass. There's certain things I'm not a big fan of. I'm a bit higher on the nullifier than what a lot of people are. That's why the channel's name is the Nullified Take.
I love the nullifier token.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, I understand people are not going to love everything, but let's give credit to them when they do a lot of things right. And another really interesting thing that we didn't really talk about too much yet in this podcast is that even Jake brought up the phrases, which last season I really wasn't across the phrases. I was like, what's Jeff doing? He's like trying to get these guys to perform circus tricks in front of him for his own amusement. And I just didn't get it. But this season, it's really interesting because I can see the strategy behind it, because we've got the same rules. but Mike is playing a different game. Obviously, Daniel assisted him in making that decision not to immediately give away the fact that he's got an idol. And I've watched this episode twice. Something very interesting stood out to me, Jake, when I watched it for the second time. Mike said that he is going to keep quiet about the fact that he's got this idol until the merge, because he can then get to the merge with an idol without anybody knowing about it. So I wonder if there is a rule that we're missing, because I always thought all three people had to say the phrase for the idol to be activated. But there must be a sub-clause that says that if people do not say the phrase until the merge, you automatically get that idol. And that, to me, then becomes a lot more useful to stay quiet if you're not in a position of danger. Keep the idol, go into the merge, don't let anybody know that you have it by saying the phrase, at least not anybody from a tribe that's not your tribe. Did you pick that up?
I didn't. And if it is a real rule, then clearly it was not a thing last season, because
it wasn't well explained.
Or yeah, either it wasn't a thing or just wasn't explained well enough, because I believe when the idols were activated last season, it was like right before the merge. It was like literally the episode before the merge, I believe so.
So what's the benefit for Nasir to come out and say
exactly.
the goats on AstroTurf phrase, if he was going to get an idol an episode later? So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if Mike doesn't understand the rules or if he's intending to play that as a fake idol. But again, this is creating so much strategy here that we haven't seen before. Qieän, you look like you wanted to say something on that as well.
Yes, I do. Because it was picked up by Daniel when he took the idol parchment for a second read. So that's where he kept on saying, oh, you know what? I should have known as a lawyer, I need to read the fine print. So this wasn't revealed in the first in the previous episode when Mike first found the parchment. So when Daniel went back and read it again, what it says is that if all three shared idols are not found by merge, the vote penalty ends and your idol has full power.
Wow, I missed that even on the second.
So basically, this is why initially Daniel thought, you know what, we need to get rid of Mike because he has the idol, and that means he's got the power. We can't give him that power. But then he realizes that, but if he votes up Mike, that idol goes with Mike. Then there's no longer a Vati tribe idol that could be utilized. Hence why the target then shifted to, then maybe we should actually think about voting out Lydia, because they don't Lydian high, the pair does not have any advantages. So I think a few things that were revealed in episode 2 when Mike first found the idol wasn't revealed until it was read again in this episode by Daniel. So which is
maybe a slight rule change. Yeah, maybe a slight rule change from the previous season, because I feel like if that was a clear thing in season 41, people probably would have played that a little bit differently. And I'm kind of wondering if the blue tribe, Ika, if they're even going to find the idol to begin with, because it doesn't look like anybody is close to it at the moment. But I think wasn't there a preview of Tori reading the Beware Advantage in the beginning of the season? I think they might have spoiled us that she's going to be the other person who's going to find it. Jake, I remember that correctly? I
think that was a bit of editing trickery. They showed the parchment and then they cut to Tori making a shocked face.
Yeah.
Because that was when they were talking about the phrases coming back. And I just want to say, so that phrasing in the note is very interesting. When it says, if all three idols aren't found, that is some interesting wording that could have some gray area. By found, do you mean does that mean literally opening the Beware Advantage? Or does that mean saying the phrase and it being activated? Because what if they all were found and then just no one says the phrase?
Also, what if the third one at Ika is found, but that person who found it decides not to take the risk and take the idol? Because you have that option. Take it or leave it. Take it and there's a risk that you have to bear. So I think it is quite interesting, because if I remember correctly, I remember seeing somewhere along the line of the same episode where they actually mentioned that the 3 phrases have to be all said at the same immunity challenge in order for the idols to be activated. So that's something else, that everybody needs to be, all 3 of them that found the idol needs to be in on wanting to use it. And at the moment, Marianne has actually kind of like split it out that she wants to use it, obviously, and Mike picks it up and he said, no, you know what, not for me, not today. So this is again another kind of like another guessing element of where the players, you have to guess whether the other person from the 2 other tribe finding it, whether they want to play it or not. So obviously,
it's interesting because I was laughing because I can only imagine how Marianne is going to bring the curious case of the bunny and the hat back into a challenge again, and people are going to be like, well, why is she bringing this up once more? She kind of got away with it in this episode because I feel like she's like the one person where everybody would have looked at her and thought, yeah, she's a little bit out there. I can see how maybe that's something she'll talk about and we don't know what she's on about. Kind of similar to how I guess Nasira last year got away with it, or last season got away with it as well, where people are like, yeah, it makes sense for Nasira to say something a little bit different. It might be something culturally that she knows that we don't know, and it could be lost in translation type of thing. But I think Mike is playing a good game, staying quiet about it. It's going to be interesting to see, because I don't believe that idols are ever truly tribe idols. Like, I mean, tribe idols have been used very rarely in the game, and for some other reason, season after season, people believe, oh, it's our idol, we're going to play it together for us. No, it's the person who's got the idol's idol. They can play it when they want, and very rarely will they play it on you to save you in this game. I do feel like Taku is maybe the only tribe. I feel like they're that close that they remind me of like a group that maybe will do something different and creatively to try and get the upper hand if they get to emerge. But it's going to be interesting to see. I do want to move on to Chanel losing her vote. Going back to the tribe here, prior to going into the tribal council, a lot of scrambling is going to happen, and we know that that tribe is very divided. We've got different pairings of 2. Jenny and Mike are very close. We know that Hai and Lydia is close, and then we know that Chanel and Daniel are very close in this game as well. And one of the things that I found very interesting here is I've had Hai as my preseason winner pick. I'm still very happy with him. I think he's a player who's just awoken from what is going on around him, and that's going to make him so much more dangerous going forward. But he picks up that Chanel is pushing a lot more things and she's a lot more nervous. So that to me is interesting, because she has come across as a player that's very poised and she's smart, and I think she's got a lot of calmness about her, but clearly she is starting to crack under pressure here, and Hai sees some of this warning signs even before they go into tribal council. But I did think that they had a very interesting plan where they tried to get both Hai and Lydia to split their votes, but ultimately that's not going to work here prior to going into tribal council, and Hai is going to read the lips of, it looked like that in any case on the edit, he's going to read the lips of Chanel when she's talking to Daniel to say, vote for Lydia. And that probably is the thing that makes him decide to do something differently here in this tribe. Qieän, this was one of the craziest tribal councils that I think I've ever seen on Survivor, and it's only day 7, so hopefully it only gets better from here. What was your thinking in regards to some of the strategy and trying to split the vote, how Chanel handled it, how Hai handled it, and how Daniel handled this situation? Because those were the 3 players in my mind that were really under the spotlight here.
So I've got 2 words for Daniel of what he's trying to do, which is double agent. So I'm not gonna yet comment whether he has done a good job at it, at being a double agent or not. But there are 2 unknown elements right now for Chanel going back from Shipwheel Island, because she knows that Jenny went to Shipwheel Island and they haven't been to tribal council yet, so she doesn't know whether Jenny has a vote or no vote or extra votes. She also doesn't know herself whether she has not, or has an extra vote. So these are all unknown elements, and actually I did a whole lot of different combinations in terms of like, what if we know, obviously they don't know, so they've got to actually do the calculations of the numbers. What if Jenny has a vote, what if Chanel has a vote, or what if both of them have, or neither one of them has. So it's a lot of things that I think I would imagine that will be going through Chanel's mind as she's taking that speedboat back to the tribe camp. Hence, which is why obviously she is a bit frazzled coming back in, and Hai is being extremely, I think he's very alert and observant, hence why he picked up that Chanel, who is usually a very calm and poised person, has come back in a bit frazzled and picked up why did she say let's put 2 on the boys and 2 on the girls, on Jenny. So I think in terms of that, this is where Hai started to kind of, like, as you say, step up into the game, where his mind is, the wheels are turning in his head. He's trying to figure it out, and then he throws it in. He's like, what if we do a 3-1 split, 3 on Jenny and 1 on Mike, just in case Mike has something. But where did he kind of come to the conclusion that perhaps Mike has something? Because so far only Daniel, and obviously Chanel knows because Daniel told Chanel. So for me, that was quite interesting in terms of how did that come about, because there wasn't an edit as to why Hai decided to put 1 on Mike. For what? Because it would be useless, because if they feel like Mike has nothing, why not just put all 4 on Jenny, and that's done.
Can I jump in for a second? I actually think Hai probably took into consideration that Jenny went to Shipwheel Island the previous round, and he probably thought that Jenny could have something. So if they throw 3 votes on Jenny and she's got an advantage or an idol, then all of their votes would have gone on Jenny. So Jenny and Mike decides who goes home. So a survivor student of the game, which I think Hai is, would probably know to split the vote, even if it's 1 vote going somewhere else, potentially to throw them off. But then again, you could say Jenny and Mike could vote together, and then those 2 votes would supersede the 1 vote in any case. So the real smart vote here, and the smart plan, in my opinion, was what Chanel and Daniel tried to do, which was to get it to be 2-2 going on both Mike and Jenny, and then they could decide after that where the votes were going to go ultimately. But it was interesting to see Hai scramble here, Jake, in Tribal Council, because he was the one person, like Lydia is completely lost at this point. I think she's not aware of what's going on in the game, but Hai also did not know who the players were, who didn't have a vote, what was going on in regards to advantages and things like that over there. And I think that the situation that Hai was in here, having to decide if he was going to stay with Lydia or not, this is what makes or breaks great players of this game, because you're under pressure. The votes are going to go not the way you thought it was going to go. There was a lot of information you weren't privy to. The easiest thing is to change your vote to try and not draw a rock, to not have a 25% chance of going home. But he stands his ground here. What does this say of Hai as a player? And do you think, similar to how in Heroes versus Villains, you see Russell Hans put his game on the line to save Parvati, and suddenly people want to work with him? Do you think Hai has got upside after this? He sacrificed this game for his alliance member, that people might say, this is the kind of guy we want to work with now going forward, because he will put his life in the game on the line for me.
I think this is definitely showcasing how strong of a player he is. I know it's only episode 3, but I think this looks really good for him. And I see a lot of people saying like, oh, it's just the obvious thing to do to stand your ground because Daniel said he wasn't going to go to rocks, which I understand that, because maybe he's thinking, okay, Daniel is for sure not going to rocks, so if I just say, okay, I'm not switching my vote, then he'll follow what I'm doing. But that's not always a guarantee, and I think Hai just kind of knew his place in the tribe and says, if I let Lydia go, I'm next, based on what's happening. Yeah. Clearly, based on the comments and how the vote has gone, they're not with me. They're with Mike and Jenny. Because when Daniel was going on his little, rant about how he's stressed and how that's why he's not going to win the game, and interesting, and I think we talked about this kind of in the preseason, where Daniel is one of the only people I've ever seen who is like, I'm not going to win. He just straight up is like, I don't think I'm going to win. And I genuinely think he believes that. And if he does,
and you create your own narrative. Like if you continue to say that, then people will start believing
just manifesting it.
Yeah.
He's just manifesting it at this point. I mean, he's talking about like who calms him down, and he says that Mike does. And I don't know if it was some editing trickery by the producers, but Hi, after he says that, is like ding ding ding. Why is he saying Mike? He's not
And
supposed to
didn't
be
he
close
also
to Mike.
didn't he also mention Jenny as well, or was it
Chanel.
Chanel?
No,
He mentioned
Chanel. So Chanel and Mike were the two people he mentioned, and he left out Hi, and Hi thought
And
he had a
Lydia.
very close relationship. Yeah, and Lydia. So he was like, okay, I'm not getting mentioned in this thing. And to me, Daniel just comes across as someone that would be a horrible poker player. Because he told him straight up, I am not risking my game to go to rocks, let's talk about how we don't make that happen. And he just tells everybody everything openly in this tribal council. But the most questionable thing for me here, because I think Hi is in a very solid position. I think everybody is going to want to work with Hi and Lydia now because they seem to be rock solid together. And you want to be part of an alliance that is not going to turn their back on you or just going to splinter in different directions. The most interesting thing for me is Daniel throwing Chanel completely under the bus here, saying that, oh no, I thought this was Chanel wanting me to vote out Lydia. I am okay with staying with you guys, and trying to paint that target on her. And that's why the question I asked on the beginning of this podcast was, who do you think is going to win out between Daniel and Chanel? Because I think that there's no repairing that relationship now between those two, because if someone's coming at you and throwing you under the bus like that in the game, Qieän, can you really work with them after that? Like, how difficult is it when trust has been broken in this game to let bygones be bygones and to try and work with them in the next vote moving forward?
I think it really depends on the person playing the game. I mean, and obviously the other person that's involved, because for a lot of people, they are actually playing vote by vote. What benefits me in the next vote? And if they are not looking at kind of like a long haul relationship, it's kind of like I need to look at what will benefit me in the next game, then I don't think Daniel will be in any trouble. But if Chanel does not think that way and she's not able to get over that betrayal, then obviously I fear for Daniel, if he's not able to redeem himself, it will be him going home next. Which would be quite interesting because, as you mentioned, like in season 41, there weren't any tribe swaps, and if there aren't any tribe swaps in this season as well, there will be no saving grace for Daniel to be able to go into a new tribe and have a fresh start. So I think that Daniel is in a very precarious situation. And I will be quite interested to see, he's a smart man, he's a lawyer. Will he be able to redeem himself and repair relationships? How is he going to approach Chanel after this? That will be something definitely to watch. Yeah.
And do you, as a player, like if I was out there and I'm Hi, do you as a player want to work with someone that has shown how quickly they can throw their closest alliance member under the bus, under pressure? Because it kind of shows you the character of the person. He's a little bit wishy-washy. He'll go wherever the wind blows him for the specific vote, like you mentioned. Like, he's happy to change it up. For me personally, I want someone that's predictable and trustworthy. So I think Mike potentially, even though he didn't have a vote, could be someone that I would look at and say, okay, well, Mike would probably play a more stand-up, straightforward game. I can work with him. Chanel comes across as someone that's a bit more calm, maybe someone that won't lose their cool as quickly, even though she did become a bit frazzled in this episode because she didn't have a vote. And I feel like that kind of points to Daniel being the odd person out. And then you also have to take into consideration that there's only 4 votes in this tribe now until Mike actually activates his idol. So with that, all the power now sits within Hi and Lydia because they've already proven that they're okay to go to rocks, and Daniel isn't okay to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this play out, but I feel like Daniel is in trouble. And it's interesting when I look at the votes here for the podcast, we've had 60% of our live audience so far saying that Daniel is the one that they're moving. Well, sorry, I asked, are you team Daniel or are you team Chanel? And 60% of people are team Daniel and 40% of people are team Chanel at the moment. And I find it hilarious because, like, I think Daniel is probably the better TV out of the two because he's the villain, he's the snake, and we all like to see the villainous play, right?
What I find about Survivor fans is that we love the chaos. We love the messiness because it makes TV gold. We love watching it because it's entertainment for us. But for people who are actually castaways being in that position, it's the worst thing to be in, because then you're constantly surrounded by someone who is so paranoid. Like, Daniel is so paranoid, and he is all over the place, and he's unpredictable. So like for me, definitely as a castaway that is not is traditionally, as a traditional survivor player, that is somebody that you do not want to work with, because you just don't know when he will turn your back on you. So High definitely been, I kind of do resonate with High a bit, kind of from kind of my experience on my first tribal council, where I was kind of painted the target. I mean, okay, I shouldn't actually be throwing any spoilers for people who hasn't watched my season, but
that's
I
fine.
definitely
Talk to it
resonate.
without giving away anything in regards to placement and things like that. That's okay.
Oh, okay, perfect. I think for the first episode where kind of Sean and I were kind of seen as threats because we were apparently looking for idols, where we obviously weren't, and I was kept in the dark in terms of who was voting. I mean, going into tribal council, I had no idea who I'm voting for. I had to sit there and kind of conclude for myself where my vote is going. Eventually, after listening to everyone speak, I realized, like, oh my goodness, Jason, you bloody whatever. Sorry, I'm not gonna curse on this. You threw me under the bus. You threw me under the bus, and I'm gonna put your name down, and I hope it's you going home tonight. And thank goodness my judgment was correct. And I can see that in High, that he is very observant. He's watching. Even though it doesn't seem like it, he's watching. He knows what's going on. He seems like he's got a good read on people in terms of when everything hits the fan and everything's out and open. Obviously, he had his kind of like he wasn't quite sure, previously at the island, but when it came to tribal council, everything was clear. So he read really, really clearly that, Daniel was somebody not to be trusted. So I definitely feel that High is somebody to really, really watch for going forward, because of how observant he is and how well he can read.
I agree. We've got some business to do quickly before we go into our top 3 players for this week. So, Qieän, I'll let you think about who your top 3 players are, and we'll get to you soon on that. But firstly, we need to look at our draft picks here for the season going into this. My top female pick for the season, Jenny, has fallen, so that has made us equal again on the tribes that we have here. High is my preseason winner pick. I'm still feeling pretty confident about him, and he is, I think, in a pretty decent spot at this point. But a few questionable plays there from Jake, your number 1 female and male
2
pick. Yeah, how nervous were you watching this episode?
I mean, I couldn't even be mad because, like, just questionable gameplay by these two. So I just had to let it happen, Feeling good about the rest of my team, though. Looking pretty good, but
I think you've still got some solid picks there. I'll put it out there at the moment. My winner pick for this season won't necessarily be who I think has played the best game for this episode, but my winner pick for the season is Omar. I think he's gonna win the season based on what I've seen so far. I just think he's a player. I want High to win it, but I feel like Omar is the one. And it's funny how both Jonathan and Omar were our last 2 picks in our team, but they've both
they're probably the top. Yeah,
top
spoiler,
2 or 3.
But he's probably going to be in the top 3 this week.
Somewhere. Are we all in agreement that Chanel was the worst player this specific week? Like, I think Chanel was the worst player because she had a tight alliance. It looked like her and Jenny were very close, and her risking her vote ended up sending one of her closest alliance members home. So because of that, I actually think Chanel played the worst game this week. She had no reason to risk her vote. She knew how important it was to vote with both Daniel and Jenny to get the person out that they wanted out of the game. And due to that, Jenny, for no fault of her own, and maybe there is a little bit because you can always try and create alliances with people and get closer to them. But I feel like Jenny kind of drew the short end of the stick here in this specific episode, and she was collateral damage. Qieän, do you agree with that, or do you think someone else had a worse game than Chanel this episode?
Daniel.
Debatable.
I
Okay.
think I think he definitely completely, he could have had something solid, but for him to throw Chanel under the bus, he completely threw away the trust that his supposed alliances had with him, before going into now it's public knowledge that he was trying to play double agent. So I think it's definitely not good gameplay on his behalf. If he had stayed calm and not fretted, he would be in a much better position going forward for the next few days. Before, he's just got to pray now that they don't go to the next tribal, they don't lose the next immunity challenge, and that they don't go tribal council again, because he is in a very, very dangerous position now. He needs to kind of tread the waters very carefully.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the top 3 players here for this week. So what we do every week is we get our guest, myself and Jake, to choose our top 3 players. I do need to accumulate it to actually bring it into the next episode, because we have been keeping a track of it. But we'll start with you, Jake, first. Who is your number 3 pick this week and why?
Number 3, I'm going to have Hai.
All right, tell us why.
So there's still some work to be done, because I believe, so Mike doesn't have a vote. So there's only 4 votes on the tribe now. And if somehow, some way, Daniel is able to reconcile things with Chanel, then it could be dangerous for him and Lydia again. But I think as of right now, he's in a great spot. He went from like 0 to hero this past week. His closest ally was about to get voted out, and then some things kind of fell his way, and he was able to just really take advantage of it. And now I don't see him going home next week, really. So yeah.
It'll be interesting. I'm sure myself and Qieän will bring Hai up at some point as well. Qieän, where do you have your number 3 pick? Who would be your number 3 pick for this week?
I'm a bit not sure who I should go for. I initially put down Jonathan for his performance as Aquaman during the challenge. That was absolutely brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to say Marianne, because she's got some serious power right now. She's got an extra vote in terms of choosing to risk her vote at Shipwheel Island, but she also decided that she came into the game to play. So when she found an immunity idol, she knew that she would be putting herself at some sort of disadvantage, but she still decided that she's going to be bold and she's going to take the idol. So I think for her bravery and making that bold decision in the game that could actually put her in a disadvantage, gives her a worthy place in the top 3 for me.
I can't argue with that. I think it's interesting you bring Marianne up, because I don't want to talk too much in the future. I didn't actually think of her in my top 3, but she does have a lot of power at this point, and she does actually, have the trust by the looks of it within that tribe, because she's freely sharing information. Which, if you can get someone that shares information with you, that makes you more valuable to your alliance members. But I am going to go in number 3, and I am going to mention Jonathan, who you were thinking about mentioning for this spot, and I guess for the same reasons that you were sort of thinking of him as a potential number 3, I think Jonathan is really well placed within his tribe at the moment. He's not going anywhere anytime soon, because they need him to win challenges. I think even if the next person needs to get voted out, Marianne and Lindsay in that tribe, I think, are the 2 that are in danger. But because Marianne has got publicly known advantages where Lindsay's one is still hidden to the tribe at this point, I actually think Lindsay is someone that would go before Marianne at this point, because they will look at tools that they can use if they were to go together to emerge. So I think Jonathan's not going anywhere. He's just an absolute beast, and also seems to be really socially aware and connected with his tribe. And I would have felt bad not mentioning him after the performance he had this week in the immunity challenge, which was pretty insane to watch. Like Dion here said in the chat, Jonathan is a tank. Jake, going over to you for your number 2 pick. Who's your number 2 pick for this week?
This week I just want to preface this by saying this week was tough because, first of all, one of the tribes wasn't even shown at all.
Yes.
So we can't really choose anyone from them because what did they even do based on what we saw? Then the green tribe was just so messy.
It's hard to choose them. Yeah.
So, and I already chose one, Hai, who I personally think has played the best out of those. So then it's really just down to the orange tribe. And there's a few options you can choose there. And so even though this player did lose his vote this episode at his next tribal council, I'm going to go with Omar.
Yep. And what did you like about Omar this episode?
I think he was able to at least establish some trust with Chanel, which although Chanel may be in a tough position as of right now, I think there's a chance that she could scrape her way to merge, and that's just another person that Omar can potentially work with. And on top of that, Omar's just in a really good position on his tribe, being close with seems like everyone, and was able to be there when Marianne found the advantage. And then I believe she ended up telling the rest of them anyways, but
I don't know if she told the rest we didn't see if she told the rest of them about the idol, but she told everybody about the vote, the extra vote that she has.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, Omar he probably knows the most. He's got the most information at hand within that tribe. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Qieän, who do you have as your number 2 pick for this week?
I think it's also another difficult one, kind of deciding between Omar and Hai, but I'm going to have to say Hai because of how observant he was and how he was able to adapt and evolve according to the situation, where he was unwavering. He stood his ground, and he was not paranoid at all after he saw what happened between Chanel and Daniel. Chanel lipping to Daniel say Lydia. After he saw that, he remained calm. He's like, I am not going to betray my ally. I will not betray Lydia. I'm going to stick with her. I refuse to draw to draw rocks. So I have to kind of give him an applause for that, because it's quite brave, because he's not afraid of going home. And he will stick up. He will stick up for what he believes. So really, really have to applaud him for that.
Yep. I will go into. I'll talk about Hai when I mention him. Hai will be my number 1 pick for this week. So I'm going to go into my number 2 pick for this week. I know I'm jumping ahead. Too excited to talk about Hai in a little bit, but I'm going to be talking about Omar here in my 2nd pick for the week. So I think a lot of us have kind of got the same people, just in a different order. And I know you've mentioned Marianne as well, which I'm really happy that you were able to give her some screen time as well, because she does deserve it after the start she's had. Omar is my 2nd pick for the exact same
reason. And I hope
reason.
she finds love.
Yes, let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
Qieän, what show would you like to see Marianne on next? Would it be The Bachelorette, Love Island, or
Love
Too
Island.
Hot to Handle?
Love Island. What's the other one where God,
Is it Temptation Island? One of them as well. Like there's so many love shows out there. Like
Bachelor in Paradise.
So many. But
Yes.
I would love to. I would love to be able to see her go onto one of her shows and find her Zach.
Yes. But you know what's the funny thing? People give her a hard time for coming onto the show and trying to find love on Survivor. But Survivor's got a better success rate with couples and people getting married and staying together than any of those love shows out there. So it's not the worst place to go and look for love, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be going out there thinking that's what you're doing. But if you find it, why not?
It happens. I mean, in terms of, obviously, it's also a dangerous position to be in when you're in a power couple position in any Survivor game, but it can work. I mean, look at Mark and Sam right now in Blood versus Water. So
exactly.
Not. I don't think it's an inconceivable idea. Yeah.
No. Boston Rob and Amber, the most famous one for Survivor US. So yeah, it can definitely happen.
I mean,
coming back to my
some just
No,
one
you
more
can-
thing. Some of
you-
some of them don't necessarily kind of work out. For example, Michelle and Wendell. I mean, they had a kind of like a very brief relationship, but
They had a situationship, apparently, according to Wendell.
Oh, really?
I think that's what he
What,
said.
what did he say? He said they chilled. Or
They chilled. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like there were
Yeah.
different levels of commitment from both of them in regards to how serious they thought it was out there. But you're right. I mean, it works for some and it doesn't work for others. But, I think that Marianne is really endearing, and the fact that she is so open. Like, I think most people are not. They're not that open with their feelings, and she's clearly an open book in regards to that. So I'd love to see her end up finding someone, and now she's part of the greatest Survivor circle. Like, you'll know, Qieän, like when you've played the game before, you're part of the Survivor family. Who knows? She might find someone from a completely different season.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly. And they are now, I think, more than 1,000 Survivor players in the world right now from the past 20 years. So she will find somebody who is a tribe.
Yeah, I think so. And there's more to come in the future. Hopefully we've got another 40 seasons in the future, so you never know.
Yeah.
Back to the rankings here. At number 2, Omar. I feel like, like Jake said, he's got all the information in that tribe. He's super likable. He's got that first alliance member cross-tribal with Chanel, and I don't think Chanel's going to hold him responsible for her losing a vote. I think she's going to be harder on herself for risking it than what she would be on him, because he really had nothing to lose. She had everything to lose, and I think he's good enough and savvy enough to explain why he risked this vote. So I think he's in a good position going into the later stages in this game, and I also don't think that he's the biggest physical threat out there. People are not looking at Omar and saying, I need to take Omar out as soon as he gets to the merge. He's got a meat shield ahead of him, and he can hide behind that in Jonathan. So I feel very, very confident about his ability to make it very deep here in the game. Going to go back to you, Jake. Who's your number 1 pick for this week?
It's got to be Jonathan.
Jonathan. All right. Giving the man. I like how you're giving my guy a higher pick than what I did, and I'm giving your guy a higher pick than what you did. Like, we're both kind of like, we're kind of reluctant to hype our own person up too much early on in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it though is that one thing you'll know about me is that I am perfectly okay with admitting when I'm wrong, and I was completely wrong about Jonathan. And I think we all knew he was going to be good at challenges, but did we expect him to be this good? I don't know. If you did, then props to you. But holy crap!
I think in the first episode, he mentioned something about how he was able to
1,000 push-ups.
1,000
push-ups.
Like
Guinness World Record for fastest 1,000 push-ups or something like that.
Yeah. So like,
pull-ups. Sorry, it was pull-ups, right? It was pull-ups.
Was it pull-ups?
Yeah, pull-ups.
Yes. So I think that kind of preluded to the fact that he would be a challenge beast for me.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry. I completely interrupted.
But you know how you get some people, Qieän, they talk themselves up before they get on the show, and they've got this massive inflated ego, like, oh, I'm going to go do this, and I'm great at that. I felt like both me and Jake coming into the season thought that was who he was going to be, and we were kind of worried that he was going to tell everybody about how great he is. But clearly he's not that kind of person. He's actually quite humble. And I think we spoke about this, and you'll have a better idea than us, Qieän. The producers probably get you to say certain things. Like, they don't put words in your mouth, obviously, but they might say, tell us a little bit more about why this is so great, or why people should fear you. They kind of egg you on to build your character up a little bit, because at the end of the day, it is for TV, right? And I'm sure that's what happened with him prior to going onto the show.
I mean, in confessionals, they're not supposed to kind of influence you in terms of what you say, but they can ask you questions that would lead you to say things that they want you to say on TV. So it's kind of for them as well. They also understand us very well as cast, because obviously we went through like a really extensive application and interview process. I think for me, it was about 2 months, 3 months,
Wow.
before getting there. So they know you very well, for us, definitely, like, LaRue and Hundrey and Christo, they all know us very, very well. So they, in terms of that, they definitely do know what questions to ask and not to ask to get a certain response. from us. Yeah.
Yeah. Jake, so sorry, we both interrupted you a little bit there. Any additional thoughts that you had on Jonathan here as your number one pick?
Yeah, no problem. So he's just in a really good spot along with Omar. I think it's kind of like 1A and 1B with him and Omar, in my opinion. And I think what kind of put him over the edge for me is that Omar did lose his vote. And although you can say that that's kind of not really, the blame isn't really on him, that's more on Chanel for giving very mixed signals to him. I mean,
yeah,
we already kind of went over that. So, but Jonathan still in a really.
Do you
good
think
spot.
he can win? Do you think he can find a way to the end and win this season?
It's tough. I mean, of course. I mean, there are very few people in the game still that I would completely write off, and Jonathan is definitely not one of those people, because I mean, he's shown he has the social skills that we thought he didn't have, and he's clearly got the physical ability. This man might, just immunity his way to the end. We don't know. Could happen based on what he's shown. He
Mike Holloway is way to the end.
Yeah, I mean, what's stopping him? I mean, you look at the other players on this season. Drea is pretty good. Lindsay is pretty good. I
saw a really funny Facebook post on one of the Survivor fan pages where it had the whole cast of Survivor 42, and they said 100% power, and then they showed a photo of him, and they said 99% power. So the rest of the guys
basically, I mean, he did a portion of the challenge by himself, then went back and grabbed his teammates and brought them back. I mean, I know it kind of rubbed people the wrong way when Jeff kind of singled him out after the challenge.
How many times did Jonathan play Survivor in the US? Do you reckon 3 or 4 times? Because I made that call, I think an episode or two ago. I said I think Jonathan, if he doesn't win it, he's probably going to come back. He's the new age James Clement. I think he's the new James Clement.
I definitely think Jeff likes him. So that's of course goes a long way. But Jeff has plenty of favorites. He loved quite a few people from last season as well, like Evie and Xander and Qieän. So I also think the show is kind of straying away from returnee seasons in general. But if they do have one, I think Jonathan could definitely be on it. But in general, Jonathan in a really good spot. I may be overcompensating because I just underrated him immensely in the preseason, but I'm very high on him now.
We both did,
definitely.
Qieän, who's your number one pick for this week?
I'm going to have to say Omar. The reason being is that he has a very strong social awareness. So his social game is strong, and then he's got his meat shield. So I think in episode 2 that he mentioned that Jonathan is his. They have this really, really, really lovely and budding bromance happening, where he says that Jonathan is his meat shield and he is Jonathan's brain shield. So should they come further down in the game, where kind of individual immunity comes into place, Jonathan can win the immunity challenges, but then Omar has the meat shield to kind of end the numbers, hopefully, to kind of help him along the way. And I personally think that you don't have to be physically strong in order to win Survivor. So with Omar, one of the things that he says that, he said that you need to be your most authentic and genuine self in this game. If you don't understand where people come from and why they do things, you can't become accepting of people outside your inner circle. So he is very accepting and of other people and aware in his tribe. So for example, Marianne is so loud and she's just so full of energy. To Lindsay, she's not sure that if she can handle this for the rest of the 20 odd more days, but where Omar kind of completely embraces that, and that builds a really good relationship between him and Marianne, and that Marianne hopefully can see that he's so accepting of her. She even weaved a prayer mat for him. So I think it's something that we really, really need to consider, that just because that Omar isn't physically strong, it doesn't mean that he will not win the game, because he's got a strong social game that maybe people are not picking up on yet.
And it's interesting thinking of it now in hindsight. When he came into this show, I think one of my criticisms for him and why I didn't pick him higher was I was worried that he didn't know who he wanted to be in the game, because his pre-season content was very much, I don't really know how I'm going to play the game. I'm going to kind of have to adapt. But when you think back, that is probably the best way to go into the game, is not having a preconceived idea as to how you want to play it, and then play to the situation that you are getting out there with the players that you have, because you don't know who you're going to play the game with. And I think he's adapted really well. So that's why I've got him pretty high as well. But talking about high, I've got high in number one here for this week for me. I do want to give credit to him. I think that he was in a very bad position coming into this episode. He was in a two-person alliance outside of the majority four. But I believe that diamonds are made in the rough, and he was out there in this tribal council. He did not know what was hitting him. He did not have all of the information, but the way that he responded under pressure and the fact that he did not cave in and stuck to his guns, I think should be given a lot of credit here. And I do think that people are now going to look at him. People like Chanel, who wants a stable partner in this game, a stable alliance member, might say, High seems a lot better to work with than Daniel, because he's going to throw me under the bus in a hot second. And I think someone like Mike will also appreciate that. Mike has already been annoyed with Daniel coming to him many a times, asking for the clue, asking for the rules. So I think the more I think about it, I was higher on Daniel than Chanel's chances coming into this podcast. But I think Daniel is going to be the odd man out. And I think High is going to be the new hotness that everybody is going to want to work with. And I can very easily see him become the leader of that tribe going into a merge situation, the person that everybody's going to want to work around and build towards the future. And I think he's got a mind for this game that we haven't fully seen yet. So I think High is dangerous. And like Jenny said when she went out, she said, you've got to be careful of High. He's going to slit all your throats and win the money at the end. I think that we're going to see big things from him moving forward in this game. So very high on High here, this specific episode. I would like to see how this is going to continue moving forward, but I'm still good on my winner pick for the preseason. I still think he's doing a good job out there. Now, Jake and Qieän, this has been great talking to you guys. This podcast went on a bit longer even than what I expected, but I had so much fun diving into a lot of crazy gameplay and strategy here for episode 3 of Survivor 42. Qieän, I want to come over to you and give you an opportunity to let people know where they can follow you, or if there's anything specific that you're working on currently that you would like to let people know about. Now's your opportunity to talk about it.
But before I do that, I just want to say something that just popped to my mind, that I could feel that potentially that High could be a new generation Yule.
Yeah,
in this season.
I said that, Jake. I said that prior to the season, and I didn't want it to come across as like, okay, he's Asian, Yule's Asian, therefore that is why I'm making that conclusion. But it's just, I do think he's a very cerebral type of player, similar to how Yule was, and I think that Yule was like that, right? Like a bomb would drop next to him and he would be calm and cool and react appropriately. And people wanted to work with him and respected him in the game. And he's one of my favorite winners. So it's high praise. And I think you said High reminded you of Todd, right, Jake? Prior to the season, you said he had maybe Todd upside to him as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure, yeah.
Yeah, I see that.
I can still see it. Yeah.
The only thing with High for me, the thing that Todd had was he had both Courtney and Amanda in his season, where High doesn't, like, I don't know if Lindsay is that level yet, but we haven't seen much of her. Maybe we'll see more in the future, but he doesn't seem to have that personally. Maybe.
Who knows?
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Qieän, did you want to elaborate anything additional on your thoughts on High and the comparison? Why do you think he reminds you of Yule?
I think, as you said, that the way that he's able to kind of like be very calm and still be very diplomatic about the way things should be handled. and that is very, very Yul. And I think it's more than the fact that he's Asian and Yul's Asian. It's more the way how they handled the situation that truly reminded me of Yul. So yeah, so which is why, like, after this episode, I'm like, okay, I'm rooting for you, Hai.
I don't remember. For some other reason, I think he may have said that Yul was one of his favorite players coming into this season as well, which is not a far stretch. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember who he had as his favorite player.
But
I mean,
I think he also said Todd was one of his favorites.
Maybe.
As well.
Maybe, yeah. Because the thing is, I can imagine as a kid watching Yul play the game. If you're, no, I'm pretty sure it was Yul. I remember now because he said as a kid growing up, Yul was someone that he could look up to on Survivor as a role model that is Asian playing American Survivor. You know, he didn't feel as much as of an outcast, and he had a role model of someone that was successful and succeeding that he could look up to, and that gave him confidence when he didn't have confidence in his own life. I'm pretty sure I saw that in the preseason content as well, and that makes sense. That's why representation is so important, and it's great to see, you know, even though it was way back when the way that they did that season was controversial, it still meant a lot for a new generation of fans that looked at it. And why I say it's controversial is because they had the tribes obviously mixed according to ethnicity in the season that you all played. But it gave a lot of people someone to look up to that they could model, you know, even in life. Because for a lot of us fans, like, I know I took a lot of inspiration from watching Survivor, and I took a lot of that on board even in my personal life. Like, how do you deal with people that you don't necessarily see eye to eye with, and how do you communicate? Like, a lot of that I saw from watching Survivor in the early years, you know?
Yeah, I must say for myself, I mean, as an Asian woman playing this game, obviously, from my memory, I've yet to see an Asian woman winning this game. And that was one of the biggest motivations for me as well going into the game, is that despite that not much was shown of me playing the game, was that I wanted to be a role model. If I do get to win the game, I want to be the role model that all these Asian girls growing up watching Survivor have someone to look up to, you know, and knowing how to handle situations. And I think it's quite important because there have been quite a few Asian women who has been playing this game, the Survivor game, that, you know, and it does give people some sort of comfort, you know, seeing somebody that is kind of your ethnicity playing this game. It does encourage them. So I do want to kind of give a shout out to all these Asian women, all these Asian girls who are watching the game. It could be you next winning Survivor, or it could be me if I get another chance to play it. So we never know.
We'll have to tweet at Manu Butta. We'll have to tweet at him.
Yes, we do have to tweet Afrikaans and Leroy and Hundry on this.
Yeah.
But I think it really is important, I think, in terms of like this representation of different ethnicities in Survivor for young girls and young boys growing up watching this game, regardless of what their background is, because despite the fact that we are only separated by our flesh color, our hair color, but, you know, culture is such an important thing, and a culture also affects how you respond as a person in certain social circumstances. So I that's one of the things I really, really love about Survivor, is the diversity that is shown in the game.
Yeah, and especially for those that don't know, in South Africa, the Asian South African community is even smaller, I think, than the Asian American community. So you were only, I believe, the second Asian female that played the game in South Africa after Ting Ting, you know? So, so in that sense, it's even more so important too.
Fun fact, oh gosh, I'm missing her name. The girl in my season started with an A as well.
Amy, or with an A?
No. Yes, is it an A? She was in Vuna OG all the way through. Skinny girl.
Vuna. Oh yes, Aneesu.
Aneesu.
Aneesu. Yeah. There we go.
She was my pre-season winner pick for that season.
Did you know that Aneesu had Asian grandparents? So she actually has Asian heritage. So like I found that out through speaking to her, obviously, during our time on the Vuna beaches. And that was just really, really fascinating. Obviously, that wasn't shown on the season, like, you know, kind of going into her background of her ethnicity and where she came from. But it's really great that, you know, people of different walks of life and different backgrounds are being represented on the show that we all love so much. That it's not limited to a certain type of people or demographics.
Yeah. No, I'm all for it. And I think that the casting team have done a great job at not, because my biggest fear, and I'll say it in all honesty, has always been when I hear that they are casting according to ethnicity and that they have to have certain amounts of quotas in a season. My biggest fear is that they choose someone based on their ethnicity, not based on the value that they can bring from an entertainment value. Now, if you choose people firstly to be entertaining on the show and to add something to the show, I couldn't care less about the makeup personally of who's in the show. As long as I'm entertained watching it, I'm all good with it, and I think they've done a really, really good job. And I understand that it's important to have representation, but I don't want it to be at the expense of getting great characters on there. And I know it doesn't have, I know it doesn't have to be, because there is great characters from all ethnicities. The casting team just has to go out there and find it. And now that you've got more and more people from different backgrounds playing the game, more and more people will probably watch it and apply for it, because they now saw someone this season like Adrea come onto the season and play. I know we haven't spoken much about her because this episode didn't include her much, but she's been playing a very aggressive game. And if she can keep that up and go into the merge and make some massive moves, she could be the next generation Parvati, where a lot of young black girls could look at her and say, I want to be the next Drea. I want to play the game. And that then means that more people apply for the game. So in that way, it works.
Exactly. So like the more exposed to they are to it, the more aware. Because again, if no Asian or no Indian ever plays this game, then their community would not know about it. Because like it's kind of like there's always a sense of pride when you're like, oh my goodness, there's this person that's on Survivor, and they're from our culture, and then that's how the talking starts, and then it gets spread. So I think it's such a brilliant game that it really needs to. There's still a lot of people in this world that do not know about Survivor, and especially particularly in the far east side, for example, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in Singapore, where I am, it's not a big thing. People don't really know about it, and I feel like a lot more people should know about this game.
What I find interesting, just since you mentioned this, and we spoke about an Asian woman winning, obviously last season had Erica, who's a Filipino-Canadian.
Yeah.
The Philippines are massive. Like, I always get fans from the Philippines reaching out to me about Survivor, and this has been prior to this season, because what a lot of people don't know is we've also had a Filipino male win a season over in Australia quite a few seasons back now. But still, due to that, I do think that there's a lot of people in the Philippines who actually are aware of Survivor and is really invested. And it could also be because one of the seasons were filmed in the Philippines. 1 or 2 seasons may have been filmed there way back in the day.
I believe one of the super fans, I can't remember his name now, but one of the super fans of the show, he's actually from the Philippines. So, sorry, I completely forgot that Erica 141.
Asia is big though, right? And people can like to say, it's kind of like saying Africa as a whole. There's so many different countries and ethnicities within Africa. So
I have to apologize for that, because when I think Asia, I just think Far East, but Philippines is, and Vietnam and Cambodia, all very big part of the Asian family. So there we go. Yeah. We do have an Asian Survivor winner that little girls in America and around the world can look up to for her game.
Yeah. Qieän, I didn't want to stop you because this is an important conversation we had, and I always love having these broader conversations about Survivor, and especially when I talk to fellow South Africans. I think we understand the cultural diversity so well, because South Africa's got 12 official languages, which a lot of people are not aware of. We're called the Rainbow Nation for a reason, because there is so many ethnicities that live in a melting pot over in South Africa. So I know whenever I've got a previous Survivor South Africa person jumping on a call like this with me to do the podcast, and especially if you're an Asian South African, which puts you in a very special bracket, because like I said, it's a very small community within South Africa. It's a growing community, but a small one still. I never want to stop you when we're having good conversations like this, and I feel like we could probably have a podcast about this as a whole separate topic and just talk about this, but I do want to give you an opportunity here, because we've been filming for quite a bit now, to talk about anything you've got going on at the moment, anything that you'd like to make fans aware of. Where can they follow you, and anything that you're up to at the moment?
At the moment, there's nothing interesting happening yet because everything's still in the works. I'm actually being a bit of a nomad because I have not settled in a specific city yet, trying to find kind of where to put my roots. I'd love to be able to go back to doing some of the crazy things I used to be able to do in South Africa, because I did firefighting, things like that. So if there is something interesting, I will definitely be announcing it on my Instagram, so people can follow me on Qieanism, Qieanism, and I'll keep everyone updated.
Yeah. Do you think you'll ever apply for something like the challenge? Have you ever heard about it before? The challenge in America are recruiting people from different international franchises for Survivor.
Oh, really?
In recent seasons, yeah, they've been doing it.
I think I definitely would love to actually look. I feel like I love the game so much, and that, the way I decided to play the game, I really held back a lot because I knew that I can't make any kind of regrets about how I chose to play the game in my season, where I decided, obviously, you don't know what's going to happen in the season. And when I got in, I threw in, and every single time something happened, I had to claw my way back into the game. If you remember where first tribal council, my name was thrown around, and luckily then we had the tribe swap where into Mvuna, I was able to rebuild relationships. And then when the relationships were solid, and then suddenly again there was another tribe swap where Dino and I were in a minority. So it was quite difficult. I've always said, like, you need moments of brilliance in order to win Survivor. It doesn't mean every moment needs to be brilliant, but you do need to have your moment of brilliance. And I felt like I was going into the game, I was still a little bit reserved, a little bit worried that going on to my Survivor Bible, Survivor 101, you don't do this. You can't take the leadership role. You don't want to be too much of a challenge beast. You don't want to be too much of something, social butterfly, etc., etc. So I think I was treading on eggshells a little bit, being very, very careful. And but I knew that, I really, really wanted to shine when it comes to individual immunity challenges. I'm just saying it doesn't mean I will. So please do not take me as a threat, everyone watching this.
So, next thing you know, the nullified take makes its way onto the next All-Star season for Survivor South Africa. And they're like, you remember when Qieän said she's actually a beast at immunity challenges?
Oh,
we need to vote her out before the merge.
No, I did not say that. Take that back. But the thing is that the truth of the matter is that everyone's we know this very well. You can prepare so well for this game, but once you get into the game, everything is thrown out the window. You gotta play it according to the people that you're playing with, and you don't know what challenges are going to be thrown at you, whether it be endurance, whether it be a puzzle, and you're just going to have a bad day and you're not going to be good at your challenges. So you just don't know. There's no guarantees. You can prepare. Like, for example, I went and did free diving lessons before I went into the game, but that doesn't mean I'm good at it. I went for one lesson to know how to hold my breath and go down.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean I'm a pro. So
it's kind of like me, Qieän. I talk about Survivor. It doesn't mean I'm actually going to be good at it. If I'm ever out there, if anybody ever listens to this, I'm probably going to be horrible. Don't worry about me. I'm not a threat.
Oh, definitely. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about Chris. We are not threats at all. Not at all.
I don't want to do the Daniel and throw Jake under the bus here as my Chanel. So we'll just say, Jake, you're the same. We talk a big game, but we've never actually been out there. So who knows what will actually happen. Qieän, it's been so great talking to you about this episode here of Survivor 42 episode 3. For those that are still listening at the live or the audio version or watching it at a later stage, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. Leave a comment below to let us know what your top takeaways are, if you agree or disagree with some of the things that we talked about here. And also, we've just reached the massive milestone of 500 subs. I believe we're actually at 515 subs now, so still growing. Thank you very much to everybody that has subscribed, that have commented below. I really appreciate the support. We are going to make that Australian Survivor buff from last season, the merge buff, available to a listener of this show. So how you participate is by commenting below, liking and subscribing, and that's going to be a live giveaway. The next goal is if we get to 1,000 subs, we're going to make 5 merge buffs for seasons 1 to 5 of Survivor CBS available to a listener as well. So plenty of giveaways coming. Thank you so much for your support, and catch you next time